My fiancé and I had been engaged 9 times, and he repeatedly tested my sincerity. Citing my materialistic nature, he constantly postponed our engagement. For our 10th engagement, I wore the smallest diamond ring and a rented gown. Ethan merely glanced at me and said disdainfully, "Charlotte was right. Grace, you are indeed a vain woman to wear such a large diamond ring. Only when you shed your greedy nature and love me as genuinely as Charlotte does, will I marry you." After speaking, he pulled Charlotte away with long strides. I looked at the empty seats reserved for our parents at the head table at the banquet. I dialed William's phone. "William, an alliance between the two families is inevitable. How about you be the groom instead?" A low, suppressed voice came from the other end. "Are you sure? You don't think I'm too old?" Faced with an array of glittering jewelry, I ultimately chose the smallest diamond ring, which was composed of paved diamonds. As the salesperson helped me try it on, Ethan, who was selecting a diamond ring for Charlotte, saw it. He immediately frowned and said disdainfully, "Charlotte was indeed right. Grace, you are such a materialistic woman to dare to wear such a large diamond ring. Don't think that just because we're getting engaged, you can greedily spend my money. My money is only for those who are worthy." I looked at the ring on my hand, puzzled, then glanced at the one on Charlotte's hand, a prominent 5-carat pink diamond ring. It was priced at $100,000. Charlotte held up the ring on her finger, admiring it. "Ms. Grace, one should be practical and not so materialistic. Ethan is wealthy, but you shouldn't be so extravagant, should you?" I quietly took off the ring, my chest tightening with frustration. "Ethan, you call me materialistic for buying a paved diamond ring. But what about you buying a 5-carat ring for Miss Charlotte? You've said things like this 9 times, and our engagement has been postponed 9 times. For the 10th time, are you still going to cancel and send me home to reflect?" Ethan's expression darkened, and he said disdainfully, "Charlotte works hard helping me with the company, so buying her a ring as a reward is only right. What can a trophy wife like you compare to Charlotte?" Ethan spoke with an air of entitlement, as if it were the most ordinary thing. Memories flooded back. Ever since he hired Charlotte, an assistant with an overseas doctorate, our engagement had been repeatedly postponed. Every time we went to choose rings and gowns for the engagement, Charlotte would accompany us. Each time, she would complain that the rings and gowns I chose were too expensive, saying I hadn't passed the test, and the engagement would be postponed. For the first engagement, I chose a pair of 6-figure matching couples rings. Ethan immediately turned hostile, threw the rings at me with a snap, and accused me of being materialistic and vain. Then, a pair of matching rings, worth $66,000, appeared on his and Charlotte's hands. For the second engagement, I chose only a simple gold ring and ordered a silver gown. Charlotte claimed it was too flashy and revealing, designed to ensnare a wealthy man, and Ethan walked away in a huff. The third time. Each time, Ethan would say, as if it were self-evident, as an illegitimate son, I'm already overshadowed by William. As my wife, you must not only be capable but also frugal, diligent, and hardworking. Charlotte even said that a woman who is materialistic before marriage won't bring good fortune to her husband afterward. A sharp pain pierced my chest at the thought. 9 times he called me materialistic, and he complained about me spending tens of thousands on an engagement, accusing me of being greedy. Did he really think I was an idiot? I recalled the last time when I was asked to choose the reception venue. For the sake of both families' reputations, I selected a 5-star hotel. Charlotte and F. and immediately began to mock me. "Mr. Ethan, I told you she hasn't changed. She really dared to order a banquet at $5,000 a table." That day, Ethan publicly declared that I hadn't passed the test, and the engagement was postponed. Later, he booked 8 tables at the same hotel to celebrate Charlotte's birthday, and fireworks lit up the entrance for a full 3 hours. Ethan continued to ramble, telling me to learn from Charlotte, to avoid vanity and comparison, and to focus on supporting my husband. He then handed the ring back to the sales associate. "You've disappointed me again this time. I, Ethan, am a man of ideals and ambition. If you don't change your materialistic ways, the engagement will remain postponed. We'll get engaged when you're worthy of me." With that, he told the sales associate to package the 5-carat diamond ring. The 2 sales associates exchanged glances, then looked at me with pity. The legitimate fiancé wasn't even worth a ring costing a few thousand. Observing his arrogant and smug expression, I smiled indifferently. "Ethan, how about we make a bet? Let's see if I'll be less materialistic by our 11th engagement." Ethan looked at me impatiently. "Not only do you need to stop being materialistic, but you also need to cure your naively love-struck desperation to marry. Otherwise, once we're married, you'll run off with any man who buys you a pastry. I slowly took the ring back and held it up to him. Ethan, you're right. I guess I'll run off with any man I see in the future. Let's wait until I've changed my naively love-struck ways before our 11th engagement. Ethan's face instantly darkened, and he pushed me in the chest with his palm. Grace, you are indeed not only materialistic but also promiscuous. I'm telling you, you must be checked before marriage. If you're not a virgin, don't even think about entering my family's door. My mind reeled. I looked at Ethan in shock, stumbling as I gripped the counter. Ethan, you are despicable. You demand that I be a virgin? Have you kept your urges in check? As I spoke, my gaze fell on Charlotte. Charlotte's face immediately flushed red. She looked at Ethan with indignation. Mr. Ethan, I've worked so hard supporting your performance, and your fiancé dares to question my integrity like this? I'll resign tomorrow to avoid further humiliation. Ethan immediately flew into a rage and slapped me across the face. You're not even married into the family yet, and you're already meddling in everything, foolishly being jealous, and embarrassing me in public. Apologize to Charlotte right now, or don't ever dream of me marrying you. I stumbled and fell to the ground. Charlotte immediately rushed forward, feigning concern to help me up, and quickly whispered in my ear, Grace, you've been abandoned 10 times, and you still have the nerve to bark here. Truth is, Ethan is in love with me now. We've slept together, he'll never marry you. She quickly pulled me up and said helplessly, Ms. Grace, I'm doing this for your own good. I want you to be a good helpmate to Mr. Ethan in the future. Look at the emerald jade bangle worth hundreds of thousands on your wrist, isn't that ostentatious? Ethan's gaze fell on my wrist. He immediately grabbed it and said, Give this bangle to Charlotte as your apology. My wife, Ethan's wife, must naturally be generous, not constantly vain and materialistic, only caring about jewelry. My heart tightened. I stared at Ethan in disbelief. He knew this bangle was the keepsake left to me by my deceased mother. Before she died, my mother put the bangle on my wrist. Gracie, let this bangle stay with you in my place. When you see it, it's like seeing me. I'll be watching you get married from heaven, happy and content. That day, I cried my heart out. Ethan knelt before my mother, swearing he would protect me for life, assuring her that she could trust him with me. Now, he was actually making me apologize to his mistress and give my mother's sole keepsake to her as compensation. Ethan squeezed my hand hard and began to pull off the bangle, saying casually, Your mother is dead. It's just a dead object. If it can compensate Charlotte, it at least has some value. Before I could struggle free, the bangle was pulled off and handed to Charlotte. Charlotte took the bangle, squinted at it, and was about to put it on her wrist. Enraged, I bit Ethan's arm, broke free from his grasp, and lunged for the bangle. Charlotte, give me back my bangle, or I'll kill you. Charlotte dodged with a swift movement and said with disgust, A dead person's belonging? Do you really think I care for it? I find it unlucky to even wear it. With a flick of her wrist, the bangle flew in an arc and landed on the floor. With a crisp sound, the jade bangle shattered into several pieces on the floor. My pupils dilated. I stared intensely at the bangle, and tears immediately streamed down my face. I knelt on the floor, picking up the jade pieces one by one, clutching them tightly to my chest, my heart throbbing as if torn apart. Ethan's doting voice rang out. Charlotte, you're right. I was thoughtless. Dead people's things are indeed unlucky, who knows what sort of bad juju might be on them. Later, we'll go to the jewelry store, and I'll buy you a good one as an apology. With bloodshot eyes, I looked at them, then lunged with all my strength, plunging the broken jade bangle into Charlotte's neck. Blood instantly gushed out. Charlotte immediately recoiled, clutching her neck as she fell into Ethan's arms. The store instantly erupted into chaos. Murder! How can someone kill over a piece of jewelry? How savage! My body trembling, I struggled to control my voice. Ethan, if you don't compensate me for my bangle, I'll kill you. At that moment, Ethan's face flashed with astonishment and fear. He hastily put his arm around Charlotte, backing away, and cried out in terror, Call the police. A lunatic. Someone's trying to kill people. Then, putting on a brave but hollow front, he grabbed a tray from the counter, held it in front of himself, and yelled frantically, No wonder your Richard liked your younger brother more than you. You're a venomous woman, a jinx. Your naively love-struck mother deserved to be tricked to her death by your Richard. I instantly felt as though I'd plunged into an icy abyss, my whole body chilled to the bone. He knew my deepest wounds, he knew exactly how to inflict pain that would make me wish I were dead. He felt for Charlotte, so he used words like a sharp sword to brutally stab my heart. When the police arrived, he quickly ran forward, pointed at me, and said, "Officer, she openly tried to kill me and my girlfriend." As the words left his mouth, he realized his slip of the tongue and hastily added, "Embarrassed, friend." Then, pointing at me with disgust, he continued, "Officer, she's constantly jealous, chasing after me to marry her, and she can't stand to see me interact with other women, resorting to hitting and yelling. Today, she even committed assault in public. Please arrest her and put her in prison for a few years to teach her a good lesson." I trembled all over, swallowing the metallic taste in my throat. In the interrogation room, the officer also looked at me with distaste. "You claim to be from an elite family, yet you're so naively love-struck that if someone rejects you, you resort to violence?" I curled my lips, scoffing. Naively love-struck? I was a social climber who married into wealth. Through his shrewdness, he gained controlling interest in the Jing in just 10 years. By the time Eleanor realized it, Richard already had a 5-year-old illegitimate son outside their marriage. Eleanor had argued, cried, and fought, but Richard simply moved in with his mistress and never returned home. The controlling interest in the company was already in Richard's hands, and Eleanor, a delicate, naively love-struck young lady, was powerless to change anything. Ultimately, for my sake, Eleanor lowered her head and begged Richard to return, tacitly accepting the mistress's existence. 2 years later, Eleanor was diagnosed with advanced ovarian cancer. After half a year of suffering, she passed away, but not before arranging an alliance for me with William. William's mother was Eleanor's close friend. Although he was 8 years older than me, he was shrewd and acted with composure, only he could safeguard my shares. Otherwise, by the time I came of age, my illegitimate brother would devour my shares, leaving nothing behind. After past, it was Ethan who stayed with me, comforted me, took me on trips to clear my head, and promised I wouldn't be alone, that he would always be there for me. In that moment, he offered a glimmer of hope in my despair, allowing me to rekindle my hopes. William, on the other hand, was cold and stony-faced, even a slight smile from him sent shivers down my spine. That's why I came up with the idea of changing my fiancé. As my relationship with Ethan grew warmer, I pleaded with Richard, hoping the alliance could be with Ethan instead. My stated reason was that William was too old and unworthy of me. Finally, after my 18th birthday, Richard and Ethan's father discussed changing the alliance. When's mother found out, she specifically came to see me, saying that Ethan took after his own mother and was not a reliable partner for life. But I, thinking she was after my shares, retorted mercilessly, accusing her of favoritism and deliberately suppressing her illegitimate son, and stating that Ethan was 100 times better than an old man, being gentle and considerate. Looking back now, they were all looking out for me. Unfortunately, I inherited my mother's naively love-struck tendencies and blindly trusted him after a few sweet words. Good thing I've finally come to my senses now. After a long while, Ethan arrived, supporting Charlotte. Facing the police's questions, Ethan's expression was cold and indifferent. "We will not accept mediation. She must be held legally responsible, and whatever prison sentence she deserves, she should get." Charlotte also held her head high, looking at me with disdain. I thought for a moment and sent a message to William. William immediately comforted me, promising to return to the country right away and telling me not to be afraid. A moment later, Ethan answered a phone call, then walked in with a grim expression. "Grace, we agree to mediation, but you must promise not to harm Charlotte again." Charlotte shook Ethan's arm indignantly. "Ethan, didn't you say you'd send her to prison? Why are you letting her off? Are you going soft? If that's the case, I'll leave. Otherwise, I might end up dead and not even know how." Ethan panicked and blurted out, "Do you think I don't want to put her away? William called and told me not to cause trouble." With that, Ethan suddenly looked at me with a dark gaze. "Grace, have you been secretly seducing William behind my back?" And with a loud smack, he slapped me across the face. "You're truly despicable, seducing even William. Have you no shame?" The officer quickly restrained him. Finally, Ethan glared at me fiercely. "Kneel down and apologize to Charlotte. Otherwise, even if the King of Heaven came, I wouldn't accept mediation. If you don't, I'll report your sordid affairs to Richard." Seeing's crazed expression, recalling Eleanor's dying wish, and thinking of the outwardly cold but inwardly kind William, I couldn't possibly put him in a difficult or awkward position. I walked up to Charlotte and lowered my head. "I'm sorry, Miss Charlotte. I acted impulsively. I apologize, please forgive me." Charlotte looked at me with disdain. Ms. Grace, it's not that I won't forgive you, but a person as shallow and malicious as you, if not taught a lesson, will cause even greater trouble in the future. Ethan also looked at me angrily. If you genuinely want to atone, then kneel and kowtow to Charlotte as an apology. Anyone can say a few words. I endured the aching pain in my heart, looking at Ethan once more. The gentle young man had become so unfamiliar and cruel. Ethan, seeing me stand motionless, suddenly kicked me in the knee. Having you kowtow to apologize is getting off easy, and you're still ungrateful. With that, he grabbed my head and forcefully slammed it against the floor. Thump, 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 once, twice, 3 times. Blood streamed down my forehead into my eyes, blurring my vision. After an unknown duration of coughing, Charlotte's disgusted voice sounded. All right, Mr. Ethan, I'll let it go for your sake. But if there's a next time, I won't be so forgiving. Ethan immediately let go and promised, don't worry, I'll make sure to discipline her properly from now on and prevent her from causing trouble again. I'll take you home to rest now. What would you like to eat? I'll make it for you, he said, supporting Charlotte as they walked out. Just as they exited, Ethan turned back and said, go home and reflect thoroughly. Write a 1,000-word letter of repentance. Only when you truly acknowledge your mistakes will we hold the engagement ceremony. I'm already working so hard at the company. If you can't help me, at least don't hold me back. Sometimes you really should learn from Charlotte's intelligence and magnanimity. I scoffed. I had sacrificed my dignity, sought favor with my father, begging him to support Ethan in becoming general manager. I even secretly visited those uncles and elders behind Richard's back, just to ask them to give orders to Ethan so he could establish himself in the Gu family. It turned out that everything I did couldn't compare to Charlotte's sweet talk and coy charm. I walked home mechanically, suddenly remembering that the photo frame with my mother and me was still in Ethan's mansion. I had no choice but to push through my pain and go back to retrieve it. As I stepped through the main door, Charlotte's voice drifted from inside. Ethan, are you really sure you're not marrying Grace? Didn't you pursue her relentlessly back then? I don't believe you don't like her. Ethan let out a soft laugh. Fool, how could I ever like her, that blockhead? Back then, Mr. So, fearing she would marry William and use his influence to reclaim shares, thereby impacting his son's position, negotiated with me to pursue Grace. Mr. So said that as long as I married her and kept her confined at home, he would ensure I'd be financially secure for life. And if I stayed loyal to him, he would even help me contend with William for the family estate. My repeated postponements of the wedding were to tame her, so that after marriage, she wouldn't meddle in everything. How else could I support you then? Laughter and kissing sounds then came from inside the house. My mind was struck by a thunderbolt, leaving only a ringing in my ears. So this was my 10 years of love, the man I considered family. I had forgiven his repeated postponements of our engagement, thinking he, having grown up in poverty with a hostess mother, simply disliked women being extravagant. I even believed he was a simple, ambitious man who would surely achieve great things someday. Tears streamed down my face. I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath, and slowly, step by step, left the mansion. Back in my small apartment, I lay on the bed for a long time. William, I can marry you as soon as possible. My only condition is that you help me reclaim the Jing family's assets and send Richard and Ethan back to where they started. All right. Wait for my word. I will make those who bullied you beg for mercy on their knees. The next day, just as I woke up, Richard stormed in furiously. Grace, look at what you've done. You upset Ethan at every engagement and even caused a scene at the police station. What exactly are you trying to do? Go immediately and apologize to Ethan. Tell him you were willful and immature. And that you'll let him arrange everything for the engagement. And about his female assistant, isn't it good that Ethan has another person who cares for him? Don't be so fixated on romance, constantly fighting with others. I stared at Richard, shocked. Richard, are you really my father? You're making your own daughter apologize to your son-in-law's mistress? I fixed my gaze on him. Richard, what benefits did Ethan give you to make you favor him so much? Or have you two conspired on something? Richard froze for a moment, then his gaze darted away. Conspire? What could I conspire? Isn't it all for your own good? Which of the elite families doesn't have a confidant? As the legitimate wife, you should be magnanimous and refined, that's the mark of a prominent family. All that petty jealousy and romantic squabbling are the ways of common families. I couldn't help but retort sarcastically, Aunt treats you like her own son every day, and you dote on her. Is she also from a common family without refinement? Richard immediately flared up in anger. What do you know? Aunt and I were childhood sweethearts. She loves me, she cares about me. I gave a cold, contemptuous laugh as I looked at Richard. Besides his good looks, he was utterly shameless. No wonder my maternal grandfather's company never made a breakthrough, remaining mid-tier. Seeing my displeased expression, Richard pulled out his trump card, saying sternly, "I'm telling you, get engaged to Ethan as soon as possible and marry him obediently. If you cause any trouble, I won't give you a single share." I smiled. Not give me a single share? Did he even have the right? My maternal grandfather had directly notarized them to me. Because he knew Eleanor was naively love-struck, he bypassed her and directly gave me 50% of the Jing shares. No one could touch them before I was married. If I hadn't overheard Ethan's words, I might have actually believed he was doing this for my own good. I thought for a moment. Now wasn't the time to show my hand. Richard, don't worry. If the engagement can't happen, we'll just get married directly. The 16th of this month is an auspicious day. Get ready to give his daughter away. Richard paused, then looked at me with doubt. Are you sure Ethan will agree to a direct marriage? I didn't want to waste words with him, so I said directly, just wait for the Gu family to come for the wedding. If I don't marry into the Gu family, then I'll give up my shares and give them all to Ethan, alright? Richard's face immediately lit up with joy. Then he cleared his throat and said, alright, I'll go back and prepare right away. But if you embarrass me, don't blame me for kicking you out. I nodded, then hastily pushed him out, because a message from someone had just arrived. They would be here in 10 minutes. Seeing again, I awkwardly hunched my shoulders, my voice stammering. Brother, you're back. After all, I was the one who had called off our engagement and called him an old man. Now, having been foolishly tricked and going back on my word, it felt somewhat dishonorable. William's expression was a kaleidoscope of emotions. Finally, he cleared his throat, suddenly produced a doll from behind his back, and said with a flushed face, Gracie, you used to love dolls so much. I wasn't good at coaxing girls, which made you angry. I specially bought this one for you today. I looked at the pink doll, speechless. He really was such a straight man. At 16, I was a young girl with a crush and loved dolls. But I was 22 now. Did he still think I was a little girl? Still, I accepted the doll with an embarrassed face, stammering, I like it, thank you, brother. We both stared at the doll in my hand, unsure what to say in the awkward silence. I was afraid of upsetting my powerful backer with a single word. After all, I was the one who had abandoned him and moved on to someone else. A moment later, William broke the silence, hand in. G me a document. Gracie, I've looked into everything. This time, I'll make Richard leave with nothing and help you reclaim the Jing. I looked at the document with confusion, then flipped to the last page. My eyes immediately welled up. Brother, thank you. I never expected my maternal grandfather to leave this behind. William put his arm around me and gently wiped away my tears. Gracie, don't cry. I won't let anyone bully you ever again. At the wedding, in front of all the wealthy and powerful families of Oakwood City, I will get justice for you and Eleanor. I nodded, tears in my eyes, and hugged William's waist, sobbing. In the blink of an eye, the 16th arrived. William hired the best makeup artist and wedding planning team for me, and the betrothal gifts filled 18 chests. Antiques and jade artifacts, precious jewelry, a luminous pearl the size of a pigeon's egg, a red coral sculpture over a meter tall. Richard looked at me in astonishment. Gracie, Ethan only gets $100,000 in allowance a month. Where did he get the money for so many betrothal gifts? I smiled. Richard, he doesn't have the money. William does. These were all arranged by William. Richard looked at me, perplexed, then turned and went to his room. A moment later, Ethan's phone call came through. Grace, don't think that by forcing my hand, you can make me marry you. I'm telling you, I won't be at this wedding. You'll be the one humiliated. I said with a smile, Ethan, come or don't come, I don't care. As long as Mr. Gu and brother are here, that's enough. From the other end, he said through clenched teeth, Grace, don't think that threatening me with my father and my brother will make me back down. Unless you promise not to interfere with my personal affairs after marriage and dedicate yourself to raising a family, I will not agree to marry you. The makeup artist was urging me to get ready. I looked at William's message, hung up the phone, and started replying to his text. At precisely 10 o'clock, 18 luxury cars, adorned with flowers, pulled up to the entrance. William had originally planned to use a helicopter, but I persuaded him against it. It would be too extravagant, Richard would get suspicious. I was still waiting for the moment to kick him out of my Jing family, in front of all the elite families of Oakwood City. Surrounded by the crowd, I got into the wedding car. Everyone knew perfectly well why the groom hadn't personally come to greet them. It was simply that I was not favored. With 10 failed engagements, the groom clearly wasn't eager to show up. Upon arriving at Crescent Estate, cannons fired, and flower petals drifted down from above, filling the air with a rich, sweet fragrance. Everyone looked up at the sky in surprise. Since when was this Mr. Gu II so favored? How could his wedding be so lavish? The large door slowly opened. William, in a dark patterned suit, stood at the end of the red carpet, smiling as he looked at me. I was just about to step forward when Ethan burst out from behind, grabbed my arm, and said exasperatedly, "Grace, I told you I wasn't marrying you yet. How could you create such a huge scene to force my hand? I'm telling you, deal with the mess you've made yourself. I definitely won't marry you. Pressuring me further is useless." I smiled faintly, shook off Ethan's grip, and scoffed, "Ethan, who said I was marrying you?" As I spoke, I looked towards William, who was walking towards me with a smile. "The man I'm marrying is your elder brother." Following my gaze, Ethan finally saw William in a groom's suit, with a boutonniere pinned to his chest. His expression cracked, piece by piece, his eyes filled with disbelief. You're actually marrying William?" A moment later, he regained his composure and became furious. "Grace, you're my fiancée. How dare you marry someone else? I forbid you from marrying William." I scoffed. "Ethan, brother was my original fiancé. Isn't it only natural that I marry him? And from now on, you'll address me as your sister-in-law. Don't go around saying I'm your fiancé, there's absolutely nothing between us." As I spoke, I held my hand up to my eyes. The pigeon egg-sized diamond on my wedding ring dazzled some of the guests. Ethan's face flushed crimson. He grabbed my hand, trying to pull off the ring. "Grace, I can't believe how materialistic you are, selling yourself out just for a ring. You love me so much, you've endured 10 times. Can't you just wait a little longer? Next time, as long as you don't ask for it, I promise I'll buy you an even bigger ring than this." Smack! A crisp slap echoed through the hall. My gaze, sharp and cold, fixed on Ethan. So, he did know I had endured 10 times. He did know he was a scoundrel. "William, Ethan must have had too much to drink. Drag him out, he's making a spectacle for the guests." William waved his hand, and several bodyguards seized Ethan, dragging him out of the hall. Ethan struggled violently, shouting, "Grace, don't be so stubborn. You'll regret marrying someone you don't love for the rest of your life. We love each other so much." William's face darkened, and he ordered coldly, "Muzzle him and keep him pinned by the entrance to watch." In the end, Ethan was pressed against a pillar by the entrance, his mouth gagged, still glaring at us. Richard was equally stunned. His face cycled through a spectrum of colors. After a long moment, he managed to compose himself, gritted his teeth, forced a smile, and called out, "Son-in-law." William nodded coolly, and the wedding ceremony began. William's parents had been aware of the plan all along, so they were naturally beaming with joy. William's mother was so emotional that tears streamed down her face. "Gracie, I've finally fulfilled Eleanor's dying wish. You and William are good children, I can rest easy now." Amidst the MC's resonant voice, the wedding officially began. William and I exchanged ding rings, vowing to be together forever. After the wedding ceremony concluded, I slowly walked up to Richard. "Richard, I'm married now. The shares my maternal grandfather left me, can they be managed by William?" The hall instantly fell silent. None of the guests had expected me to publicly demand shares for my husband. Richard's eyes darted rapidly. He finally forced a smile. "Gracie, you see, now that you've married into the Gu family, you're a member of the Gu family. We can't just change the Jing to the Gu, can we? Otherwise, people will look down on William, thinking he married you just to take over the Jing." Everyone looked at us with suspicion, then began to whisper amongst themselves. "We always knew Ms. Jing was naively love-struck, but it's really true today." Exactly. Just married, and she's already trying to hand over her family's assets to her husband. Mr. Gu must have charmed her with just a few words. Hearing the noisy chatter below, I smiled faintly and then roared, "Richard, who exactly is trying to take over the Jing?" The venue instantly fell silent. I immediately activated the large screen, and 2 bright red marriage certificates appeared before everyone. "Richard, you are merely a son-in-law who married into the Jing family. Now that you've remarried, what right do you have to cling to my Jing family's company? Your surname is Liao, and your illegitimate son's surname is also Liao. You are the one truly trying to take over the Jing. You want to turn my maternal grandfather's family legacy into your Liao family's property. Dream on." Everyone's gaze towards Richard grew more scrutinizing. Everyone in high society knew perfectly well how Richard had climbed the social ladder step by step, how he had driven his wife to her death to marry his mistress. It was all clear, but no one had dared to mention it publicly. Richard's face flushed crimson, then erupted in fury. He swung a slap at me. Rebellious daughter. Back then, your MOT. Her and I loved each other deeply. Before her death, your mother entrusted the company to me, and your maternal grandfather, trusting my abilities, put me in charge of the Jing early on. What right do you have to question an elder's decision? I grabbed Richard's wrist and flung him away. Richard, you are truly shameless. You conspired with your mistress to drive Eleanor to her death and seize her assets. Do you really think your wicked deeds can escape divine retribution? With that, I pressed fast forward, and a notarized document appeared on the large screen. It was prominently my maternal grandfather's will. All my shares shall be divided into two. One portion shall be gifted to my granddaughter Grace, and one portion to my daughter's husband, Richard. Should the marriage contract be dissolved, any shares held by a non-Jing family member shall be immediately reclaimed. I spoke coldly. Richard, my maternal grandfather's will states clearly, any shares held by a non-Jing family member shall be immediately reclaimed. You have been married to Brenda for 10 years now, which automatically dissolved your marital relationship with Eleanor. Now, take your mistress and illegitimate son, and get out of my Jing family's company. Everyone stared dumbfounded at the will displayed on the large screen. Richard's eyes were wide. He stared at the will in disbelief, muttering to himself, impossible. The old man clearly told me and Eleanor face to face that he was giving us the Jing. How could there still be a will? It's fake. It must be fake. William signaled, and several lawyers and notaries walked onto the stage. One of the white-haired lawyers took the microphone and declared loudly, I swear on behalf of the law that this agreement was drafted by me and 3 other lawyers, in accordance with the last wishes of Arthur. He then presented a hospital certification, proving that my maternal grandfather was indeed of sound mind at the time, and that this represented his true intentions. The notary also spoke immediately, stating that the notarization was done on the spot, as commissioned by my maternal grandfather. Richard's face instantly turned ashen, and tiny beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. Some of my maternal grandfather's old acquaintances in the audience couldn't stay quiet and began to clap and cheer. That's Arthur for you, truly strategic and decisive. The social climber worked his whole life, only to end up serving the Jing family. Old is incredible. He outsmarted that malicious social climber in one fell swoop. Indeed, Richard only has himself to blame for his wicked heart. If he had stayed with Eleanor until old age, he wouldn't be left with nothing now. It's just a pity for poor Eleanor, who was literally driven to sickness by him. Richard finally understood that the tide had turned, he was truly finished. He began to look at me, pleading. Gracie, I am still your biological father. You can't let others accuse you of being heartless, can you? How about this? I'll give you 50% of the Zhang shares, and then I'll pay you annual dividends on top of that. I looked at my hypocritical and despicable father and said, enunciating each word, no. I will reclaim everything that belongs to the Jing family. I won't give you a single penny, Richard. I want you out of the Jing family. Richard immediately grew furious. Ungrateful daughter. How can you treat your biological father like this? Aren't you afraid your mother, watching from the grave, would curse you for being so cold-blooded and vicious? I chuckled softly. Richard, I might be young, but I'm not foolish. You know better than anyone how my mother died. When you wake up in the dead of night, aren't you afraid Mom will return as a vengeful spirit to haunt you? After so many years, I recalled my mother's medicine and how she had always been in good health. If hadn't tampered with things, how could Mom have developed cancer? After my mother's death, I never saw the medicine by her bedside again. Looking back now, everything became clear. In this high-tech era, it's easy for someone to die, especially a wealthy woman whose mental state was fragile and who was tormented, perhaps even naive. A few doses of certain chemical substances or radioactive materials would be enough. Richard looked panicked. I didn't. Your mother brought on her own cancer by dwelling on things. I scoffed, stating coldly, Richard, did I say it was you? How about we let the police investigate? Perhaps they could uncover some clues. Richard immediately panicked. Gracie, you're grown up now. Let's just follow your grandfather's will, and I'll give you the company. He then pleaded humbly, Gracie, Aunt and I are both getting old. You can't just leave me begging on the streets, can you? People would laugh at you and William. Before I could speak, William spoke clearly and loudly. I'm not afraid of what others think. Justice will always prevail, Richard. Take what's yours, but you won't touch a single thing from the Jing family. Richard looked at William's stern expression and could no longer hold himself up. He collapsed to the ground. You can't do this. I toiled my entire life for the Jing. If not for my contributions, then at least acknowledge my hard work. But no one paid him any mind throughout. Ethan's eyes remained wide with shock. He whimpered at first, but eventually, only regret and pain remained. 3 days later, William accompanied me as I officially took over Jing. He decisively injected $5 billion and a technical team to revitalize the company. Jing's seasoned veterans, seeing a generous benefactor arrive, grinned so widely their mouths nearly split to their ears, repeatedly calling William son-in-law. They even patted my shoulder and said, "Gracie, I always knew you had your grandfather's demeanor since you were little. You truly are a descendant of the Jing family, adaptable and resilient, courageous and insightful." Those few days, the company operated smoothly, and I successfully familiarized myself with all its operations. All employees, seeing the company reach new heights, became even more motivated. For a time, Jing showed signs of prosperity and growth. After firmly establishing myself as CEO of Jing, I began to deal with Richard. I reclaimed his cars and houses and froze his accounts. Richard angrily stormed the company, demanding that I compensate him for his 2 decades of salary and due dividends. I couldn't be bothered to waste words with him, so I immediately summoned the finance department and lawyers to meticulously calculate the money he had spent on his mistress over the years and on himself. The finance department eventually calculated that, based on the highest management salary and his commissions, he was owed a total of $80 million. But the mansion, luxury cars, jewelry, and various daily expenses he bought for his mistress totaled $400 million. In the end, he still owed me $320 million. Richard's face was darker than coal. Finally, exasperated, he snarled, "Grace, you ungrateful wretch. I have no money. If you've got the guts, send your old man to prison." I smiled. "Sending him to prison isn't necessary, but I can certainly leave him and his family of 3 begging on the streets." William specially hired a debt collection agency for me. In the end, they were each left with only the clothes on their backs and were kicked out of the mansion. All the jewelry and luxury items, after I catalogued them, were immediately donated to charity. After dealing with Richard, Ethan showed up at the company. He snapped the CEO's office door shut and looked at me with deep affection. "Gracie, I'm only just realizing now how intelligent and capable you are. You are truly my ideal wife." He pulled out a huge diamond ring and knelt before me with a thud. "Gracie, I was foolish before. Now I'm officially pursuing you. Brother is not the right match for you. I am." He then reached out to take my hand, intending to put the ring on my finger. "Gracie, don't worry. I'll treat you well from now on. I'll help you manage the company so you can be a happy, carefree woman." Looking at the shameless Ethan, I suddenly laughed. I never knew someone could be so utterly shameless, openly targeting my Jing. I glanced at the vase on the desk, grabbed it, and smashed it onto his head. "Ethan, I am now your sister-in-law. You dare harass me? Just wait for brother to punish you." His face immediately changed. Ignoring the blood gushing from his head, he said in a panic, "Gracie, please don't tell brother. I truly love you. You can't be so heartless. Gracie, I know you love me too. You can't ruin your lifelong happiness for material things. Divorce William now, and let's start over, okay?" No sooner had he finished speaking than the door burst open with a bang. William's face was filled with rage as he stared darkly at Ethan. "You beast. You dare disrespect your sister-in-law? It seems I've been too lenient with you." As he spoke, 2 bodyguards behind him walked over, grabbed Ethan, and dragged him out. To compensate me for the fright, William specifically took me out for Western food. Only when we returned to the family estate that night did I learn that Ethan had been subjected to family discipline and sent to an overseas branch. Grandfather's exact words were, "a disgrace, never to return." A year later, I successfully gave birth to twin babies. William was overjoyed and distributed $10 small cash gifts across the entire city as a blessing. Holding my son, I watched the crowded streets and spotted a familiar yet strange face. Richard's hair had completely turned white, and he was wearing a work uniform. His mistress beside him also looked haggard, with an apron tied around her. The 2 squeezed into the crowd, frantically grabbing for the small cash gifts. "Oh, I heard their Precio. A son had seriously injured someone in an altercation and was sentenced to 10 years. In that upward glance, Richard and I made eye contact. He was about to speak, but I turned and walked into the building with my son. From then on, our paths diverged, and I never wished to encounter him again. The